straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
Is this when the gun goes off? Bob?
Yes.
The bizarre reenactment during Robert Durst murder trial. Attorneys for the real estate heir take to the courtroom floor to defend their client.
It's a full-service law firm.
Legendary singer-songwriter Bob Dylan sued, a woman saying she was just 12 years old when he allegedly molested her. And hear from people who say they've survived a serial killer. Your inside look into these face-to-face meetings with a murderer.
It's incredibly harrowing, but also incredibly inspiring.
Plus, sentencing for an animal rights attorney who now admits to plotting to kill her husband's girlfriend by hiring a hitman.
I've never wanted to kill anyone. I'm not capable of such a thing.
Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Simon Chowdhury in for Brian Buckmeyer, and with me is Terry Austin. Now, we have a lot to talk about today. Death, disappearances, and dismemberment. We begin with the usual case of Robert Durst and the bizarre courtroom reenactment of the shooting death of his neighbor, Morris Black. Robert Durst is on trial for the murder of his best friend, Susan Berman, which happened in December of 2000. But in court, attorneys are now trying to explain how he shot his Texas neighbor back in 2001. Durst was acquitted of Morris Black's murder, but this jury is still able to hear details about it. According to Durst, Black stormed into his apartment, took a gun that Durst had stored in his oven, and pointed it at Durst. Durst then grabbed for the gun, and the two men tripped and fell. That's when Durst says the gun went off and Black was shot. Durst says he then chopped up Black's body and threw it into the Galveston Bay. While Durst is on the stand testifying, attorneys got on the floor and reenacted that scuffle. Watch.
Where was you and where was Morris Black when the gun went off?
Lying on the floor of the kitchen.
So you fell backwards?
Mr. Chesnoff has done his best Hollywood falling back, like still grasping the gun, finger on the trigger.
Ago in Galveston, I could get down.
And we'll stipulate that Mr. DeGuerin got down with him. Then he won't actually have to do it.
Where's the television camera for this?
This is my favorite part of the whole trial so far.
I don't know who to root for here. See this? We've got Mr. DeGuerin playing Mr. Black. No, Bob, I'm sorry, Bob is on the right side. And they are both. Well, I describe it. Okay. I'm not sure that I want to.
Well, after that Oscar-worthy or cringe-worthy reenactment, however you want to look at it, the judge asked Durst, was that really how the shooting went down?
By Mr. Lewin and Mr. Milius and by you and Mr. Chesnoff, I think, piped in. Was that accurate? Is that the way it happened?
It's a full-service law firm.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. But was that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, defense attorneys created an animation of the shooting for Durst's Galveston trial. They played that video and asked Durst, how did the gun go off?
And confront Morris. You wrestle over the gun and the gun goes off as you hit the floor. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that the way it happened?
Just about.
Did you have your finger on the trigger at any time?
I never had my finger in the inside the trigger bar. I was scared.
What were you afraid of?
Here comes a man with a gun.
And what did you do in response to that?
I grabbed him.
What did you grab?
With my right hand, I grabbed the gun on top of his hand, and with my left hand, I grabbed his shoulder.
Well, Durst went on to talk about what went through his mind after the shooting that led him to dismembering his neighbor's body.
When I got back to the apartment, Morris's head was in a puddle of blood, and it was very apparent that he was dead. I decided that there's no way that anybody's going to believe that my neighbor is lying in my kitchen with a bullet from my gun in his face, and that I had rented this apartment disguised as a woman. I walked back to the apartment, got the axe out of Morris Black's apartment, and I proceeded to chop the limbs off of Morris Black's body.
Wow. Chop the limbs. Wow. Amazing to hear that in court from his own mouth. Now, joining us today is Dave Arenberg, the state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. And Dave, have you ever seen anything like this before in court?
I have not. That is really unusual, Sima. And I tell you, it did not sit well with me as a prosecutor to watch as the jurors were laughing at the defense counsel and even at the defendant's comment, his joke about full service law firm. I mean, this is a guy on trial for a murder, and they have heard that he has killed at least one other person and dismembered that person's body. So for those jurors to start laughing, I hope it was just maybe being stir crazy where they just needed a release after so many weeks of testimony. But as a prosecutor, it's not a really good sign when the jurors are laughing with the defendant and defense counsel rather than at him.
That's right. I know, lots of laughing on such a serious topic here. Terry, let me ask you, do you think the judge should have allowed both the reenactment by the attorneys and the video reenactment?
I don't, and I agree 100% with Dave here. No one should be laughing. This is a very serious matter. But sadly, even the prosecution, Lewin, was laughing. They all made light of this reenactment. When you look at the animation, I thought that was a job well done. I thought it really showed what happened. I thought the jury took that seriously. But this reenactment by DeGuerin and Chesnoff was not serious. Neither one of them was physically able to do it. And so I think it became light and it became humor for the court. All the parties there thought it was funny. So I don't think it was something that should have been admitted.
I know, it felt just a little, that's why I said cringeworthy. It did feel a little cringeworthy. But we have still so much more to come, and still ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Another renowned singer accused of sex crimes, how this decades-old accusation can still be filed. Plus, R. Kelly's trial for sex trafficking and racketeering charges is about to begin. What you need to know, that's coming up next.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
And welcome back. Legendary singer-songwriter Bob Dylan has been accused of grooming and sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl. A woman who has been identified with only the initials of JC claimed that Bob Dylan used drugs and alcohol to groom her when she was just a preteen in order to sexually molest and abuse her back in 1965. Now, a spokesperson for Dylan said that the 56-year-old claim is untrue and will be vigorously defended. So how can something that allegedly took place so long ago go through the courts now? Well, the suit was filed under New York's Child Victims Act, a law which allowed for a one-year revival period for the statute of limitations in civil lawsuits where the cause of action is child abuse, regardless of when the abuse took place. So Terry, you know, when you hear about these high-profile accusations, I have to ask, do you think the media and the public may have already formed opinions about the guilt or innocence of Bob Dylan?
You know, clearly there will be people who think just because of the accusation that the person is guilty. And then there will be others who think that this is too far in the past. Why is this person coming now? And these claims are probably not true. So you have people on both sides. But I do think that having seen several recent cases, Weinstein obviously being the biggest one, Cosby, although he had an ultimate victory there. But I think these cases really have made people come forth, and it's given women a voice. And obviously, that's been underscored by the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement. So I think, listen, let them have their day in court and see what happens.
Yeah, well, Dave, I want to ask you, these allegations, like I mentioned, they occurred back in 1965. So how will the parties be able to pursue or defend their claims? Will it be just her word against his?
Well, it is a civil matter, so we don't have the burden of proof beyond any reasonable doubt. A 56-year-old claim would be nearly impossible to prosecute. That's why this is a civil matter under a unique statute in New York that allows for 1 year civil claims from as far back as forever to be claimed and to be filed. And it's interesting that the deadline is about like a day or two from now. It just got in right under the deadline. So there'll be people on both sides, as Terry correctly said. There'll be some who question this plaintiff's motives and others who will automatically declare Dylan guilty because of association. The Harvey Weinstein, the R. Kelly, the Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby, all these celebrities who we once looked up to have fallen fast. Although I got to say, I don't know how many people ever looked up to R. Kelly. But when it comes to Bob Dylan, I just think this is something that is probably going to be take a lot of time. It's a 56-year-old claim. I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of what really happened. And that's a shame because you never want to see someone's name tarred forever. On the other hand, you hope for justice for anyone who was abused as a child. So like Terry said, you know, I'm sort of caught on this one. The prosecutor in me wants to say convict or find him guilty in some way. But when it comes to due process, he deserves that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how that plays out. And you mentioned R. Kelly, you know, his trial is set to start this week in New York City. The R&B singer faces multiple charges for alleged sex crimes, including racketeering and sex trafficking, some of which date back to the 1990s. The singer's defense team has filed a motion requesting to dismiss all of these charges. The jury has been selected with 7 men and 5 women set to deliberate the fate of R. Kelly. Opening statements will begin Wednesday, and our very own Brian Buckmeyer will be reporting live outside of the courthouse. Well, coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a former animal rights attorney gets to know what life is like behind bars. More to come on a shocking murder for hire plot. Now, kidnapped and locked in the trunk of a car. Yeah, this harrowing story of how one woman escaped a serial killer. Your exclusive preview of the newest show on the A&E Network. That's next. Welcome back. Now, few have come face to face with a serial killer and live to tell the tale. The new show on A&E, I Survived a Serial Killer, is giving an in-depth look at their stories. Law and Crime Daily's Anjanette Levy spoke with the show's executive producer and has a sneak preview for us. Take a look.
I saw the bus go by. Suddenly, I heard a really kind voice. Hey, do you need a ride? So I got in the car, and I saw another human being turn into a complete monster. He grabbed me and shoved me into the trunk. He pulled over and got stuck in the sand. I flipped the trunk and think to myself, just run.
New series, I Survived a Serial Killer, coming in August, only on A&E.
Joining me is Mark Anstendig. He is the executive producer of I Survived a Serial Killer on A&E. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mark, tell us a little bit about the show.
Well, Anjanette, it's definitely a show that at the outset, we didn't really know if it was possible to pulled together, 12 compelling serial killer survivor stories. But amazingly, we were able to sort of find 12 stories of women and men who endured sort of an impossible, horrific circumstance of being attacked by an assailant who obviously at the time they never knew was a serial killer. And only later would they realize how many more people these killers' lives had destroyed. We definitely look to telling people, allowing our survivors to tell their stories in their own words. And we're finding, as you'll see when you watch the show, you'll find that it's incredibly harrowing, but also incredibly inspiring.
Mark, do you have a favorite moment from the show?
In the premiere episode, the survivor, Jennifer Spenson is her name. She was attacked in the early 90s by a man named Andrew Urdialis.
He bashed my head into the dashboard.
What she did, we were able to kind of represent visually sort of some of the ways in which our survivors get through their horrific experiences.
I saw a knife, I saw a gun. I finally realized he's gonna murder me.
She was attacked and then locked in a trunk. And back then, they didn't have those safety latches that you can open up from the inside.
I could see the telephone poles. And we passed one telephone pole, and then the next. And the more that passed, the more hope that I lost.
So she claimed it was divine intervention, and she started to claw her way through this trunk of a moving car, and amazingly was able to sort of find the latch that was like hidden behind all this debris and metal, etc., pop it open.
I realized that I was probably never gonna come out of that desert.
And while the car was briefly pulled over to the side of the road, she just said, you know what? Screw this, I'm running for it. And she got out of the car, ran.
I put the trunk, and I just started driving off.
He was running down the middle of the road with a machete over his head. And I just think to myself, just run.
And actually, you see it on the promos too. It's this, he had a machete in his hand, he was chasing her, and she just ran for her life. So you just can get the sense of the power, when you have that moment, that live and die moment, that fight or flight moment, they all want to live and they do what they have to do. That was an amazing moment for sure.
Well, sounds great. I think we'll all be tuning in. It sounds really interesting. Mark Anstendig, thanks so much for joining us to talk about I Survived a Serial Killer on A&E.
Thank you so much, Anjanette. Thanks for having me.
And we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Oh, incredible stories there. Thank you so much, Anjanette. I Survived a Serial Killer premieres on the A&E Network Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. You won't want to miss it. All right, well, when we come back, how an animal rights attorney found herself on the other side of justice, the affair, the murder for hire plot, and how it all unraveled. We'll have all that on the other side of the break. Well, a former animal rights attorney will now be spending the next 10 years of her life behind bars for an attempted murder for hire plot. Jennifer Emmy pleaded guilty to 9 criminal charges, including trying to solicit a hitman to kill her estranged husband's girlfriend. According to investigators, a man contacted them saying he spoke with Emmy about hiring someone to, quote, take care of the woman Emmy once hired to be her family's au pair. Emmy reportedly told the informant, quote, I'm inclined to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. Well, in court, Emmy was extremely emotional, saying her words were misinterpreted.
It really turns out I'm the worst criminal in the world. I was so easy to charge, and I was given so much attention and such a microscope was put on me. I found out my husband had committed adultery with our former au pair girl beginning in the fall of 2019. My husband and I were completely together at that time. We were never separated. I wanted to protect my children from her and not her abusing them any further and confusing them. I was beyond devastated, deeply hurt. I felt so betrayed and just wanted to protect my kids from all the trauma and confusion. I was emotional, I was irrational, and I did solicit to get rid of Karen. And all those other references Ms. Knowles made, that's just absolutely not true.
You can hear the emotion in her voice. Now, the judge rejected Emmy's plea for probation and sentenced her to 10 years in prison. So, Dave, was this decade-type sentence too harsh, or was it justified?
It was very justified. And as an animal lover, I appreciate her dedication to our four-legged fur babies. I have my basset hound that I rescued right here beneath my feet here at work. But that's no excuse. She is someone who has a pattern, according to the reports, of being violent towards adults and children. This is not a one-off. And she's lucky that all the other convictions that she had were all treated with a sentence that is concurrent with the current one, not consecutive. So she's lucky she got just 10 years overall.
Well, Terry, the defendant, as we mentioned, is an attorney. Does it surprise you that she did not think about the legal consequences of her actions?
It is a little bit surprising because you would think that she would know that there could be an electronic trail for everything that she ever did. There's a footprint there, and all of that can be traced. And I do agree with Dave. It's a little bit ironic that here she is. She's a prominent animal rights attorney, and yet she can so easily think about killing another human being. That's really horrible when you think about how she plotted this all out. And she does have a history of violence. She was accused of choking her children, and she put a knife to her ex-husband or her estranged husband's throat. So I definitely think the 10 years was warranted here, and she should be behind bars.
And Terry, real quick, yes or no, do you think Emmy's attorneys can appeal the sentence?
I think they probably will. I think they'll lose, though.
Okay, it will be very interesting to see that. Thank you so much for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.